The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Nick Whitcomb, owner of Body Tech Fitness Gym in Merseyside, also known as the People's Gym. Last week, Liverpool was struck with a Tier 3 lockdown, and 5 armed police officers attended your gym, issuing you with a £1,000 fine, with penalties set to increase exponentially with each return visit. But you fought back, keeping your doors open and launching a campaign to overturn the ruling, which you said defied the scientific evidence. Since then, you received international media attention, garnered over 375,000 signatures on a government petition, and raised over £50,000 to cover the legal costs for your cause. Mayors, police forces, and MPs have united in their support for your fight to serve the members of your community, protecting their physical and mental health. Today, you announce your victory and are allowed to legally reopen your gym. Congratulations, and Nick, welcome to London Real.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you for having me.
Look, it's great having you here. I want to hear about today, and I want to hear about the whole story. But, you know, if anyone's watching, I just want to talk about some of the stats that are there. And you've mentioned some of these on your Instagram feed as well. But, you know, Prince William, 2 days ago, our future King of England, said that we are in the middle of a mental health catastrophe. And in a survey of 70,000 Britons, 1 in 10 has reported suicidal thoughts during lockdown. And that number doubles for the unemployed. And it also doubles for the youth aged 18 to 24. At the same time, the esteemed Lancet Medical Journal has shown that exercise 3 times a week can reduce depression by 43%. And some of the figures you threw out there were amazing, Nick. 22 million gym visits, I think, in the last 5 to 6 months. Only 78 COVID cases. That's 0.35 out of 100,000. And even Public Health England's own data says transmissions in gyms account for 1.7% of the cases. I mean, look, hospitality accounts for 3.3%. Don't get me started about that ridiculous lockdown. But look, the science was always on your side. And look, this is something dear to my heart. Be honest, you know, when we got locked down here, I was training in the stairwells here, you know, and when Virgin opened up down the road, I almost gave everybody a hug and a kiss. And I'm there pretty much every single day. I'm swimming. I just did leg day. It's so important for my own mental health. I've struggled with it in the past. I've struggled with addiction, to drugs, to alcohol. For me, my daily gym time is crucial. So I really appreciate you and your fight. Nick, tell us the big news today, and then walk us through this crazy journey you've had for the last couple weeks.
Sure. So the big news we had today, I'll be honest, we went to bed feeling pretty deflated last night. Our local MP, Angela Eagle, sat in the House yesterday and she asked the question for us to Mr. Hancock, will you provide the evidence as to why you've closed gyms across Merseyside? And she was more or less ignored. So going to bed last night, our entire campaign, you know, the 75% of our gym businesses across Merseyside that have stayed open when we thought we were so close to a victory. We went to bed last night feeling extremely deflated. You know, we thought we had victory. You know, we thought we were 99% of the way there. And then to obviously have that happen in the House yesterday was really disappointing. So to wake up to the news this morning, I woke up to a message on Twitter from our mayor, Steve Rotherham, just saying, check the press. And the press was that they've reversed the decision. They acknowledged that it was wrong. They've called it an oversight. Whether it was or not is, you know, is another discussion. So we're back in business. You know, our sector can thrive. The science speaks for itself. You know, we've got decades and decades of data that evidence how important health and fitness is, how important nutrition is, you know, from not just from a physical perspective, but from a mental health perspective, as you say. You know, we know that depression rates are up double from last year. Suicide rates are at an all-time high. We've had this data for decades, and for me, it really begs the question: why has nobody asked the question? Why was this even allowed to happen in the first place, and why did it take 7 days for it to be reversed? No one can seem to answer that question for me.
Yeah, one of the most frustrating things in the past 7 months, Nick, is that we've been talking about this virus, but no one's been talking about how we can get healthier. There hasn't seemed to be a conversation about training, about diet, about building the immune system, about losing weight. That seems to be completely ignored. And yet, we talk a lot about social distancing and masks and lockdowns, but, the human body seems to me that it's 50, 60, 70, 80% of the equation. And then to go ahead and shut down a gym, which is, a primary source for mental health, physical health, it's frustrating, right?
Yeah, I mean, who knew the health and fitness sector is paramount to the health of the country? Who knew? But it's been a long battle, and we don't understand why it's happened. As I say, we've got decades and decades of data to support why, and we, as you say, there's been no mention of getting fitter. Where my question is, where is the workout to help out scheme? And not to be taken out of context here, I'm fully behind the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. I think it's fantastic that we try to get our restaurants and our cafes, back on the up. But I think they go hand in hand. And I think if we're really going to try and push our economy, we should have done it hand in hand. There should have been a workout to help out alongside an Eat Out to help out. We should have pushed this hard. I mean, here in the UK, we pay our TV license. We have BBC One, BBC Two. How much would it have cost to have a personal trainer spend an hour on BBC once a day to do a home workout broadcast free to the nation, to try and alleviate some of the strain from the NHS, to try and alleviate, some of the spending that diabetes and obesity costs us? It costs the NHS 9 billion a year. It costs wider society 35, 36 billion a year. We could reduce that drastically, and no one seems to be asking the question. And I honestly can't understand why. And nobody who I've engaged with so far, from politicians to the titans of our industry, nobody can tell me why there hasn't been a push. If we truly want to protect our NHS, which we should do, why has there not been a bigger emphasis on health and fitness? Why has there not been a bigger emphasis on nutritional education? Why is nobody asking these questions? Out of all the elected officials across the country, why has not a single person said, we could probably do this better? Let's open a conversation, let's open a dialogue. Let's push the sector that is potentially the biggest contributor to alleviating the strain from the NHS, so we can truly tackle the COVID infection rate and the mortality rate. No one's asking these questions. Why?
What do you think the answer is, Nick? Do you think they're, strange lobbyists that don't want that to happen? Or do you think it's that a lot of these MPs don't go to the gym themselves? Or do you think they think that the public doesn't want to hear, they don't want to be told what to do? What do you think it actually is?
I think it's two things. So I think first and foremost, and you just touched on it there, I think it's because next to nobody in the house uses a gym. I mean, we know that Mr. Johnson cycles his bike in the summer to number 10 for a bit of good press. Whether he actually, does anything fitness related in his life, I don't know. But we know that he's quick to jump on a bike when the press are there at number 10. Nobody that I can see in the house fits the bill of somebody that takes exercise and nutrition seriously. And if you're trying to take this epidemic seriously, and if you're trying to take our health service seriously, why are you not taking our sector seriously? So my response would be, the first problem is obviously the collective of people that we have in charge are not in tune with today's society whatsoever. We know that time and time again, they evidence that to us. And they say, for me personally, for my generation, they push us so hard to vote. Why don't you vote? Why do you waste your vote? It's a waste. It's a waste. Well, now more than ever is clearly evident as to why we do not vote. Because you've shown us here in Liverpool that our local MPs have no power. So central government stated that this was a local decision. Now both our mayors, all of our local MPs, our police have all stood up and said, wait, this had nothing to do with us. This was not our decision. This was central government. We've had this confirmed. And they're just pointing the finger back at our local government saying, no, it's up to them, because they don't want to have to admit they've made a mistake. And I think this is one of the fundamental issues that we have now in Parliament. Nobody is willing to hold their hands up and say, we made a mistake, which I'm sure you'll agree with me, Brian. We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. You wouldn't be human if you didn't. And we would have more respect for the system as a whole if they would just say, guys, we're in a time of national crisis. It's difficult. We've never endured something like this before. So we're doing our best. We've made a mistake. We've rectified it. We're now doing the right thing. Not once out of all the mistakes that we've made in the last 6 months have I heard any of them say, I'm sorry, we made the wrong decision. Let's try a better way. It just seems to be constantly coming up with new ideas, but not accepting that the previous ideas failed and as to why they failed. And no one seems to be asking the question of how we can do this better. We just seem to be doing the same thing over and over again. And it amounts to insanity, in my opinion. You know, we need fresh blood in there. We need fresh ideas. We need people who are in touch with the people so that we can actually get things done. You know, there is no point having the people leading the country who don't engage with the country, in my opinion.
It's a great observation. And I've been asking myself the same question, Nick, in the past 7 months. You know, a part of me thought a month ago, you know, let's just give them amnesty. You know, we're going to just reset. And every bad decision you made because of COVID, it was a crazy time. Nobody knew what was coming. Guess what? It's all forgiven. But that means let's start making intelligent, science-based, proportionate response to the virus decisions going forward. That's all we ask. And yet we seem to be in this like hangover of decisions makings or covering up or sticking with a bad decision we made in the past. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, Nick, because it defies logic, the decisions we're making now. But it seems that they can't reverse course or change course, or I guess they have to admit wrongdoing, and I guess they think they won't get reelected. I think the public would be happy to forgive if they saw some logic and science, but that's leadership. A leader needs to step up and say, guess what? We got it wrong, but right now we're going to get it right. And that means the next 6 months, 12 months, we're going to thrive as opposed to go further down the hole, which is the way it looks like we're going right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, all we're looking for, and I believe I speak to most of my generation, is just somebody who's genuine. We're not expecting anybody to get this right time and time again. But I mean, I posted on my social media yesterday, I think it was. It's, you know, in a time when we employ thousands of the greatest, most tactical minds across the country to run the country, why is it taking a gang of uneducated scallies from Liverpool to bring government's own data and articulate it back to them before they actually stop and read their own data? How has this information got past thousands and thousands of industry heads and leaders before anybody's bothered to even read the data? Because they clearly haven't. As you say, we're responsible for 1.7% of the infection rate, 72 cases across 22 million visits across the country between July 24th and the end of September. Why is not one person in that room who sat there when Boris made the announcement to close down the health and fitness sector, why did not one person hold their hand up and say, maybe, just maybe, this requires a deeper conversation? Not saying you're wrong, but maybe this just requires a deeper conversation because the potential health implications of enforcing this are drastic. They're dire for not just for the Liverpool City region, but obviously it would set a precedent then for them to make the same enforcements across the country, which was likely the plan, no longer is. But the health implications that would have had across the country, and there are many areas and many boroughs now going into tier 3, the damage that you're doing to our people, the people that you're elected to represent, why are you not asking these questions? Why?
And the thing is, it's not just your sector either. It's the hospitality sector, it's the tourism sector, and these are, you know, hundreds and hundreds of billion-dollar industries. And again, people's livelihood are going down the drain, which affects the physical health and eventually the mental health and everything. So that's another conversation. But, you know, you are one example of many industries that are getting the same treatment. And like you said, it is crazy that some guys up in Liverpool had to feed back the data that was probably collected somewhere in London back to the Parliament in London and then force them, after many tries, to make an intelligent science-based decision. You know, it's frustrating. And it sounds like you're frustrated because it seems like the central government here kind of bullies certain areas in this country to just accept their policy because I guess they have more power here. And we're seeing the same feelings, I think, in Manchester. And I know you repeatedly said on your Instagram, we stand united in the North, because it's not just you guys feeling this up in Liverpool, right? It's a lot of areas.
Yeah, it's the country as a whole. So obviously the way that I've been framing it is Liverpool lit the match. You know, we lit the match for it, but this spread across the country very fast, and the campaign and everybody that backs us, the speed that this is collected and picked up over the last 6-7 days is huge. And I think that's just testament to how people are really feeling right now, that we do want more science-based decisions. You know, we want genuine leaders who are authentic, who are happy to acknowledge when they're wrong, because at least then we'd have some faith in them. Because if you're never willing to acknowledge that you're wrong, how are we meant to, have any faith in you whatsoever? And with our local leaders, they also come under a lot of fire now. I don't know if I mentioned this in our conversation before we went online, but the leader of our local council, Wirral Council, Jeanette Williamson, she's had to remove herself from Twitter because she was being bombarded with abuse from the public because central government were pointing the finger at local government saying it was their decision. So she's now had her mental health jeopardized and absolutely crippled with abuse online because central government aren't willing to admit that it was their error. So they're not trying to, it'd be unfair for me to frame it like that, but they almost created a divide in our community by blaming the authorities. And obviously the natural instinct for most people there is then to blame the local authorities, which then creates a rift between the community and the authorities. And then you have uproar. And then people would have forgotten about the fact that we've been pushed into tier 3 by central government, and they'd have focused on abusing the local authorities. And that would have taken away from the bigger picture that, wait a minute, this isn't right. So, we really tried, all of us gyms who stood together, we really tried to reiterate the point that we stand with our police. And we know this for a fact. We've had this from 22, 23 different patrols of police who stand with us. Don't get me wrong. Nobody endorses breaking the law, but they know that the legislation was unjust. And they know that it was due to change, and we respect that they had a job to do. It wasn't their decision to enforce this. So there was not a chance that we were going to turn against our own police who didn't agree with this decision, who stood with us to have this overturned. We stood with our NHS, we stood with our mayors, we stood with our MPs. And look what we've done. We've created not just a national, but a global movement for what's right, because we didn't allow the powers at play to divide our community. And we stood strong, we stood tall. Liverpool stood strong, the North stood together, and then the rest of the country got behind us, and soon after the world got behind us. And I don't want to say we're unstoppable, but we've made a change that I personally haven't seen happen, especially not fueled by my generation, my entire life. And I feel blessed, and I am super appreciative to have been part of it and to have had the support that we've had. And it's been as difficult as it has been. It has been equally as rewarding to receive, the hundreds of thousands of messages that we're getting, and I do mean hundreds of thousands of messages.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch you, actually, Nick, because we had some interesting times earlier this year, at London Real in March and April and May, and where it felt like at one point the whole world was against us, and then we rallied a bunch of people that were for us. And so I saw a lot of my journey through your eyes this last 7 days, and I could see the highs and lows that you were going through, and it's challenging, but ultimately, you said the word there, when they divide us, it's how they win. And whether it's intentional or a byproduct of whatever they want to do, either way, it's true. But if you can stand united and keep perspective, which was good, because you could have easily called out the police and tried to vilify them, which would have been a mistake, and you would have maybe lost that way. But instead, you brought everyone with you as long as they were willing to admit that the science was right. And one thing I want to do is I want to salute your mayors up north. Honestly, I've been so impressed with them. I gave Liverpool mayor a shout out, Manchester mayor a shout out, because these are leaders that are looking after the interests of their people. They're serving their citizens. Here in London, I'm so frustrated because our mayor literally has been crusading for a lockdown. He's been lobbying for it. He's been telling us it's inevitable, which I thought it was science-based instead of being inevitable. And he's literally trying to shut us down. And it's frustrating because I feel like it's very hard for us to fight back here. So we've got our own little weird battle, down here. And I'm very concerned if he tries to pull some of the moves they're pulling up there. But you guys have now been a great example of what solidarity looks like and sticking by the science. And it's been an amazing journey to watch. Just for people that maybe are international and don't know the whole story, can you just tell us, how did this start? And there was this incredibly epic piece of video where you shot, where there's a picture of 5 armed police officers, and then you flip the screen and it's you, and you're in the people's gym, and there's some people lifting weights. And it was this crazy piece of video that, it really was surprising to see that contrast. What was happening that day?
Yeah, so we found out 2 days before Liverpool was pushed into tier 3 that it was likely it was coming. So our mayor, Joe Anderson, he tweeted out 2 days before when he'd been offered the support package for the first time from central government. And he tweeted publicly that his feelings on the package that had been offered was likely to take Liverpool back to levels of unemployment we've not seen since the 1980s. Now, me personally, I was born in the 90s. I never got to see that, but my family are from Anfield, Liverpool, in Liverpool City. And they tell me horror stories of the 80s. And, it's, from what it sounds to me, from people that I take very seriously, it sounds like probably one of the most difficult experiences our city's ever endured since the war. And that's not something that I wanted for my generation, most certainly not. And, our city, I mean, I know this is much bigger and we do have national and global support here, but just to touch on Liverpool, we've not seen a unification of our people like this since the 80s. Like, we've not seen a movement this powerful with this many people behind it since the 80s. And all the war stories that I hear from the 80s from me, we endured the tough times and, we were standing up with the unions and everything else. They all sound like fantastic, heroic war stories, but I've never seen that. And to experience over the last week what it sounds like Liverpool experienced through the 80s, where the people have really stood together and fought for what's right because they knew what was right. They knew what was right in their heart. I'm still waiting to wake up. I really am. I'm still waiting for somebody to pinch me to wake up. And as you say, it's not just, this battle was never just Liverpool. We have set the precedent for the rest of the world, and there's movements popping up all over the place now. And just to clarify, this wasn't a reckless move. As you say, we are pushing for science-based decisions. We want to know that this country is under control and the decisions that we're making are informed, they're science-based. And that's all you can ask for. If you can ask for the science and you can open a dialogue for a good conversation, an informed conversation, that's the best way that we can do this. Whereas, we don't want to be confused with anybody who's just, completely reckless and defying the rules. But look, if the science doesn't support the decision that's made, there's a case to be made. And we're seeing this pop up all across Europe now. We're seeing this in the US. People are standing up for what is scientifically inaccurate. And I think that's the general feel across the world right now, is that we want more science-based decisions. And, we really want to get ahead of this, and we really want to tackle this and hopefully get back to some sense of normality, next year. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to be completely rid of this, but it would be nicer to be focusing on family time again, and less, being able to get some sleep at night without having to worry about whether you're going to be able to pay your mortgage next month because you don't know whether your job's going to be there, or, you don't know whether we're going to be in lockdown or not, or whether you're going to be on 66% furlough or 80% furlough or no furlough whatsoever. It would be fantastic for the mental health of our entire nation if we can just get to this time next year and we can get a sense of normality running up to Christmas next year, and we can actually spend some time with our families without having to worry about, social bubbles and everything else, which, we do take seriously. But what I'm saying is, if we can tackle this the right way from a scientific perspective, maybe we can get back to normality, or at least close to it. And just to add to your point, if you don't mind, on Andy Burnham of Greater Manchester, Liverpool salutes this guy. He is an absolute champion of the people, and I would love 10 seconds of that man's time just to shake his hand when that becomes allowed again. I have nothing but respect for that guy. We wish we had him here in Liverpool, that's for sure.
Like I said, I've been saluting your mayors up there, and they're doing what they should do. They're fighting tooth and nail for the interests of their own citizens. Period. That's the job of local representation, from members of parliament to mayors of cities. It's just, you don't see it that often, and I haven't seen it for our 9 million citizens, unfortunately. And it's been stark, the comparison between your leadership up north versus what's happening down here.
And they're taking a risk by doing it publicly as well, and I think that's what's really great about our mayors right now. They're taking to social media. Welcome to 2020, guys. Nice of you to finally join the room. Do you know what I mean? They are publicly now. If Joe Anderson and Steve Rotherham and Angela Eagle hadn't tweeted publicly that central government were lying about it being, in their hands, we never would have known. We never could have got this overturned, because we would have thought, right, this is the decision that's been made. That's that. But the fact that they publicly stood against central governments on a decision that was clearly wrong based on the science, as you say, you've got to commend them for that. They put their necks on the line. They've stood up against central government to do what's right, to amend an error. And fair play to them for that. You can't ask more of that than your leaders, than to stand up publicly and put themselves on the line for what's right for the people that they represent. So fair play to them for that.
Yeah, and it is an amazing thing that they did. It's just that also means that the system broke down, the fact that they had to go to social. And I met a few entrepreneurs here in London who were barely staying alive by putting, outdoor seating to keep their businesses functioning. But the only reason they got approval from the council is because one of the guys knew somebody at Sky News and got on, or they got a tweet retweeted. That's the only way they could get any action by the government, is if they were shamed on social. And that just means the leadership is broken down, the accountability is broken down, no one's paying attention to the science, everyone's got some strange agenda that's just not aligned with the people. So yeah, thank God we have social, because that moves mountains, these days. But it shouldn't have to be that way. That's what's frustrating. So that day when those police come to your gym, like, what's that reaction? Because I've been on a few shows when, back in April, we did this massive show. It was the second largest YouTube live stream in the world, and it was going to go on to be one of the most watched shows of history, 40 or 50 million views, and it was deleted and banned from YouTube, and we were put on warning, and we've been censored ever since. And within 2 minutes, my first decision was, you can't do that. I have freedom of speech, and I'm going to upload another copy right now, and I'm going to try to fight you. And I've been asked by a bunch of hosts, they're like, why did you do that? Because you could have easily not done that. And I just said, I didn't even think about it. It was just my reaction. And so my question to you, Nick, is what made you react the way you did when the police show up? Because a lot of people would get scared by that, and would kowtow, would change their views. So what was that thinking process like for you at that time?
There was a whole lot of adrenaline, let's be honest. When they turned up,
And I know you've been on both sides of the law as well, which probably kicks the stakes up even more. You're not just some corporate, Virgin Active, CEO. Like, you've lived an incredibly interesting life. So maybe that has something to do with it too. We can get into that later.
Yeah, of course. So obviously there's a whole lot of adrenaline there, and as you say, I'm not a big corporation. I am a man on his own. I'm a street kid with no education. So I don't know whether they see me as an opportunity to nip this in the bud early on. And by them, I don't mean the officers that attended, because of course it wasn't their decision to do this. Now, we had a visit first thing in the morning when we opened, obviously against legislation. The gentlemen, the officers come around, they give us a formal warning. They just said, look, guys, we know that it's wrong. We're sorry that we're here. We don't want to have to do this. The general feel amongst the police is that it is going to get overturned, because we know that it's wrong. We just have to do our job. So, we're here politely just to let you know, here's your first warning. You'll likely get another warning tomorrow, and then £100 fine the day after, 200 the day after that. Now, 3 hours later, they returned in force, as you've seen with the big yellow holsters. And they'd come back 2.5, 3 hours later, and I wasn't present at the gym at the time. I'd just gone home to try and get an hour's sleep, because obviously we were under a lot of pressure and I hadn't slept. They called me and said, look, Nick, you need to get back to the gym. I said, do you really need me there? Is it that important? He's like, you need to get here now, basically. So I got to the gym. He's like, look, we've had orders from the boss's boss's boss that we need to enforce this hard. So we've come here to say, you either close your doors now, or here's your first £1,000 fine. It will double every time we give you it. We can give you a fine every 3 hours. That'll go up to a maximum of £10,000, which can then be issued every 3 hours, which equates to £80,000 a day, given that we're a 24-hour business. So obviously they're threatening to hit me with an £80,000 fine a day. And I said, my decision was fueled a lot by the way that they handled the situation, because even though that they were there in force, and respect to Merseyside police for this, they did not want to be there. And they stressed the point that they knew it was wrong, but this was coming from higher up. So to know that, we were breaking legislation and the police were there to do their duty, which we pay our taxes. These guys couldn't win. If they didn't do their job, we complain that we were paying our taxes and the police weren't doing their job. So they were stuck. The orders come from obviously central government, and they were being forced to enforce a piece of legislation that they know is unjust. So I said, gentlemen, look, I'm just going to take a quick video of you just to let the people know that you're here, because we are, as you say, the People's Gym. We have a huge sign, the People's Gym. That's what we are. And we want to keep people up to date. And they said, look, Nick, if you close your doors now, we won't fine you. I said, guys, it's full of customers. I'm not asking my paying customers to stop in the middle of what they're doing. So I said, if you can give me enough time to allow them to finish, every single person that's in here, for as long as they need, I'll close my doors for the day and I'll reassess tomorrow. They weren't prepared to do that. So I said, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to give me the fine. So they issued me the first fine, very reluctantly, I might add. Obviously with the intention of coming back 3 hours later for 2,000, 3 hours again for 4, up to 8, and then to 10, and then every 3 hours it would be 10,000 over and over and over. So I uploaded the video straight away. Obviously I made a public statement to say what had happened, because how do you need, I think there were 7 officers in total, by the way. I'll have to double check. I know you can see 5 on the video. There was 7 in total, 2 vans. Why do you need 7 officers from the division of the police that are trained for firearms to come out and issue £1,000 civil fine? Why? For me, that makes no sense. That wasn't the choice of the officers. That was clearly the choice of somebody senior or somebody in government instructing the police. That's a scare tactic for me. That's all it was. That was like, right, because we went viral the day before. These guys really have an opportunity here to cause us problems with, what we're trying to enforce, even though it's unjust. So they tried to nip it in the bud, and obviously that backfired. I put the video up. It's on like, I don't know, 3.6 million hits now. It made national news. It made CNN, Russia Today. It's been everywhere. So, that really woke up the industry and my generation as a whole to be like, right, science doesn't support this. We can actually stand together. And at that point, we had about 60% of the gyms in Merseyside standing with us. We got closer to 80% as of yesterday before we got the good news. So, everybody really got behind it. And I think that video was crucial. And I think social media has been crucial in our fight to do this. Obviously, we've had another 19 visits from the police since. Fines have been issued across Merseyside. There's, I don't know, maybe 13, 14, £1,000 fines been issued that I'm personally aware of. There's probably a fair amount more. But the general feel across the borough and from the nearly 20 visits we've had from the police is, this isn't us. We don't want to do this. We know that it's wrong. We know that scientifically it makes no sense. I mean, just statistically, right, across all the sectors, and don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying anybody should close. We should find a way to keep the economy alive and get a hold of this virus. There has to be a way that we can do that. So I'm not saying anybody should close. But our sector is responsible for 1.7% of the infection rate. So statistically, they've made the worst possible choice that they could make. How is that possible? Do you know what I mean? And how do they expect people not to acknowledge that? If they publish the data, here's X amount of sectors, here's what they contribute to the infection rate. How have they gone for the bottom of that list and made the statistically worst decision they could possibly make? And that's why we ended up with the police supporting us, with our MPs supporting us, with our mayor supporting us, and most importantly, the people supporting us, because it made no sense. Statistically, it was the worst decision they could possibly make, and that's just based on the infection rate, not even taking into consideration the strain that we can alleviate from the NHS. That's not even bringing that into the conversation. So how have they made such a drastic error? How has nobody asked this question whatsoever? I don't understand it. I honestly don't. And I know that you don't yourself. And I'm yet to find anybody that can explain to me why this decision's been made and why this conversation has been had and why no one's emphasizing the health and fitness industry to contribute more. So just to summarize, all the police visits that we've had, they've all been the same feel. They know that it's wrong and they're being forced to implement this unjust legislation. And you can imagine for a second the psychological damage that's doing to our police. These are members of our community who are being forced to strip away the livelihoods of our local businesses, of our local community, fine by fine. We've got to live with these people. I have police officers and members in my gym. We are located less than a mile away from Arrow Park Hospital, which was the first hospital in the UK to receive COVID patients from China. Chris and Thea, who stood with me publicly on this movement, who own Empowered Fit, they're less than a couple of hundred yards away from that hospital. We are ground zero, so we understand the severity of the situation, and we understand it as a community and as a collective of people that we needed to stand up for what was right. This was never about, the financial gain or anything to do with that. We just looked at government's data and we knew that we needed to unite the people and do the right thing.
And then a couple days ago, you posted something that it looked like it was going to get 180'd on you, that it looked like, it was like a local meeting where they seemed to not talk about you on the agenda, and then they were going to take away your crowdfunding money, and it just sounded like everything had gone worse. What was that all about?
This was the most disappointing part of the whole thing, if I'm honest. I mean, aside from the initial decision to do this was, that could have been an error. But calling it an error, whether you want to believe it is or not, is an entirely another conversation. But this was malicious. This is what really disappointed us. Now, we have a section of our council that deals with environmental health. Now, I won't name any of the parties that were involved, but somebody accidentally went into a staff meeting and accepted a phone call from a member of the public. Didn't realize they accepted the call. So we have the entire hour meeting on record, where they proceed to talk very disrespectfully about the police. They say that they should be given out higher fines more frequently. They should be enforcing this harder. But they also state in the phone call, in the interview, in the meeting, which is really interesting, that they know legislation is going to be changed. They know that we're doing the right thing, but because that their division feels embarrassed because they haven't been able to close us, that they want to come after us and they want to slander me personally. They have somebody in public health working on taking away the GoFundMe 53,000 that we raised, which we announced days before this that we were going to donate every single penny to mental health charities across our borough. So with that in mind, they still wanted to take that pot of money away. As I say, they were defamating my character, bringing up my past from a long time ago. And as I say, I'm a street kid. I've been through darkness and I've come out the other side of it, and I've reformed my life. And to think that when they had the knowledge that we were doing the right thing, but just because they felt embarrassed that they couldn't close us, they wanted to slander our campaign, take away 53,000 from mental health charities, and to not stand unified with their borough was extremely disappointing. I guess that's just people. I guess I know that they don't speak for the whole of the council. I've spoke to the head of our council, and she is with our cause. And again, no one endorses us breaking the law, but she did know that it was wrong, and she did fight for us. So this is just a rogue sect of our local authority that have that made these statements. And I try not to get angry about it. It's just hard to not get disappointed, because when you stand with your police, your NHS, your people, your politicians, your mayors, to know that somebody would try and derail it, knowing that it's so clearly the right thing to do, is disappointing. It's disappointing for humanity as a whole, I think.
Yeah, you must have been on some serious ups and downs emotionally the last 8-10 days. And again, I know we only see pieces of it on Instagram, but the feelings coming from something like that, to the massive amount of money you raised on GoFundMe, to I'm sure a few trolls out there that start questioning how you're going to use the money, and you're like, how did I get this? I'm trying to do the right thing here, and yet when I try to do the right thing, so many people try to do me bad. But it's like almost that's the test from the universe to see how committed you are. That's the way I see it when these things happen. It's like, okay, well, that just means you gotta stand up stronger, right?
Yeah, it's as you say, it's once you're in the public eye, you're open to scrutiny, and that's fine. That's okay. Nobody should be above questioning. And I suppose it's only natural to have your integrity questioned by people that don't actually know the type of person that you are. And though it was clear that the journey that we were on and the campaign that we were pushing for had good meaning, it's not to say that that is me as a person as a whole. So I understand why people ask questions. And that's why we continue to release videos and we continue to update people on what we intended to do. And, our intentions have always been pure. It's always been for the people, for the right reasons. The ginormous sign that you see in my gym that says the People's Gym, you know what I mean? I didn't put that up yesterday. That come prior to this campaign. Do you know what I mean? This isn't some sort of spin that we put on this to try and gain traction. We really are a gym of the people, and I really try to try to be a man of the people, because I enjoy people. I enjoy conversation. It's I don't see how anybody could be against that view in life. I really don't. We should be working together, and today is evidence more than ever that if we do stand together, we can do bigger things.
Yeah. Nick, tell me, what is the way forward? What does the next 5 months look like? Are you out of the clear? I'm the kind of guy that never celebrates because I'm always worried for the other shoe to drop. But what happens, because we got a winter to get through, we've got also a lot of politicians that, still are going to have these same patterns of behavior, of not listening, not going by the science for whatever reason. So what do you think happens until next summer?
From a political perspective, I mean, it's hard for me, being somebody of my generation, to have any faith in the system. We do need a system in place. I just think the one that we have right now is entirely redundant. It's evidenced over and over that it doesn't work. And it's fine that it doesn't work. It just means we need to get with the times. We just need an entire, revamp of the system, and look at the way that we do things, and look at how we proceed in a more analytical, scientific way. Let's look at the evidence. Let's look at the data. Let's scrap everything that we've been doing before. And, it's going to take a whole lot of work. But for what it will save us in both lives and finances for the economy as a whole, if we do actually reform the system, the potential for that is huge. It's astronomical. Now, for our sector, the next step for us now is to try and push the health and fitness industry onto the essential services list. Now, that's our goal. I think bigger picture, the other industries need people to step forward who are articulate, people who have the information, who can make the same fights that we can fight. Obviously, we've been asked along the way, why are you guys not fighting for other industries? Well, guys, if I had that information at hand, I would use my platform to do so, But the last thing that you want is me stepping up and making the fight for hospitality and having the wrong information and me being annihilated online. I mean, we had a conversation with Sky Live, and the lady tried to trip me up quite severely, and it didn't end well for her whatsoever, because I had the information and it couldn't be argued with because it was government data and she just had no rebuttal whatsoever. However, if I make that argument for hospitality and I lose that argument, then the public lose all faith in that campaign, So I think every sector right now needs a voice. I think they need a voice that represents the sector. I think they need to go hand in hand with their politicians, even if it's fresh blood. Let's get some fresh blood in there. Let's get them working with local businesses, because as it stands, the people that we've elected to represent the people are not engaging with the people. Now that's a failed system. My people and my generation specifically, we use Instagram. You will not find politicians on Instagram. You'll find maybe 1% of politicians on Instagram because they're just not in touch with that world. And fair enough, they don't want to do that, but how are they going to know the feelings of the people that they want to vote if they're not engaging, if they're not on the same platforms, if they don't even have a representative of themselves on the platforms that we use to engage with, with the rest of the country? It makes no sense. So I think we need new leadership. I think it's more likely that we can make change with new leadership than rather trying to, teach an old dog new tricks. And I know that sounds disrespectful to those that are in power now, but I think it's mostly a generational thing. There are people of that generation who do understand my generation, and that's fantastic. But they're few and far between, but they do exist, and it is important to note that. But I think the majority of the people in power that we have right now are not in touch with the real world. And as you were saying, the battle that you guys face in London with Sadiq and the lockdowns that are coming, it's a much different battle for you guys, obviously, because you're in the thick of it. But I really do think that London will stand up. I have faith in London that the people have seen, obviously, what we've done in Liverpool here, and they will make a push for science-based decisions. And I personally think that the economy in London will be kept open. Am I right in saying that you guys are trying to have the 10 p.m. curfew scrapped now?
Well, we're on tier 2. Which the mayor lobbied for, and now he's asking to remove the curfew, which I don't really understand. So again, I've watched this enough to where it doesn't make sense to me anymore, Nick, which is why last week I decided to stop talking and start walking and run for mayor. So that's what I'm doing. And again, I'm doing and my policies are simple, the stuff we've been talking about. First of all, get London back to work, period. I just think a lot of these politicians have never run a business before, and they don't understand it's the lifeblood of a community. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, and it affects so many people's lives and livelihoods. And I've had, black cab drivers in here, from the people from the theater industry, people from the coffee industry, people from everywhere, and they all want to find a way to get back to work. And yet our mayor here seems to be the opposite. It just seems to be, let's find a way not to work. And I don't know, I can't understand it. It seems to be some other weird play of then next year you'll ask for a bailout and you'll blame it on central government. But I don't want to play games with 9 million people's livelihood. So it's get back to work, science-based decision making, very simple, proportionate response to the virus, protect the people that are in danger, but allow the healthy people to do what they need to do to, keep the country moving forward. And health first has been a big one on my plate. Really invest in our health in a preventative way. The NHS is not there to cure your ails. It's your responsibility to invest in your own body and make it strong and healthy. And that means nutrition, that means exercise, that means, smoking cessation, strong conversations about alcohol, and, trying to find a way we can get the country into regular exercise. Like you said, how come the BBC didn't have, something that was getting people healthy. You know, imagine a Britain that was in good physical fitness. I mean, we'd be unstoppable as a country, really. I mean, it's almost that missing link. So I'm just trying to put all this stuff out there and push it forward. But it's a lot of the things you're talking about, Nick.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think a campaign for prevention should always come before a campaign for cure. And I think, I mean, don't get me wrong here. I'm no epidemiologist, I'm no economist, and I'm certainly no politician. But for me personally, as one of the people, I would say the way that you're doing it is correct. You're engaging with the people. The first conversation that you and I had was on Instagram. You know, that tells me that you're awake to the platforms that we use. Now, whether using Instagram has a net positive or a net negative, you know, impact on society as a whole, that's a different conversation. The fact is, my generation use that platform, and you engage with my generation on that platform. And that's what we've been asking the politicians for years and years, whilst they're saying, please vote, don't waste your vote. Well, we're saying, well, open a dialogue with us, have a conversation with us. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I think that's what we need to see more of.
Yeah, it's a really good point you've made. And it sounds simple and it sounds a little silly, probably to our politicians, that being on this one social media platform would make a difference, but it would. I mean, again, you have one job as a leader: to listen to the people and to serve the people, and rinse and repeat. That's it. That's all you do. That's it. Your job is not to, you know, whatever, you know, become famous, you know, do anything to get reelected, whatever. Push your own agenda. It's really to listen to serve the people. And I think it's a great point you make. It's simple, but it's a great point. And hopefully a lot of politicians are seeing this now. I hope it can. But I mean, again, I really appreciate for what you're doing. And I think it's good you're sticking to your knitting, because it's congruent with who you are, your character, your last 10, 20 years of what you've been doing in Liverpool. And it means that when you speak, it means something. And you've fought. And again, you are a beacon for so many industries. You know, you have no idea, Nick. You know, you are the beacon for the hospitality, for the theater industry, for all these other industries that have been marginalized, that no one is noticing because they haven't been able to rally the people like you have. So again, you know, just want to say thank you for stepping up and doing this. Final thoughts, Nick, for anyone listening on either side, whether Boris is watching, whether someone else in maybe Australia or New Zealand or California, you know, where my parents are from, that are having their own lockdown issues and might have to fight for gym openings. Just final thoughts.
My final thoughts, if you believe there is an injustice taking place, then get the data, articulate it in such a way that the powers that will be will understand you. You know, take to social media. You have the backing of our entire country, of the entire world. You know, you can engage our generation through social media, and if you have the science to support your arguments, you have a strong argument. And all you need to do is just keep pushing, keep sharing, encourage people to engage, and you really can, you know, make some good change in the world. And we can do some good things for a whole lot of people, and we can see that across the world. It just takes somebody to stand up with the right information, with the right message, with the right voice, you know, and let's get the global economy back on track, and let's save lives, and, you know, let's do some good in the world. You know, why wouldn't we want to?
Yeah, let's all come together. You know, that's what we need to do. Let's come together, check our egos at the door. Let's do what's best for everyone, you know, and I know we can get there. I mean, look what you've done. You've gotten so many disparate types of people all on the same page to do something. Like you said, this hasn't been seen in your area for 40 years, right? Any kind of that solidarity. It's a beautiful thing. This is the time to do that, not be divided. Look, we're going to have links below on your social. Also, your bio at Instagram has a link to the GoFundMe campaign. We donated yesterday. I encourage people to donate because I think it also sends a message. It just sends a message that what you're doing is important. It's all going to go to mental health, which is really important. Any other ways that we can help you right now?
I think we're covered. I think we're good, but I would say continue to share the message so that we set the precedent, and all the other sectors and, you know, the industries across the country can all stand up and open a conversation with our leaders, you know, so that we can all benefit and move forward. So just keep sharing. If you see somebody in a separate sector that's trying to push for the same thing, for equal rights, and, you know, to have the right decision made, you know, just keep sharing. Even if you don't know the person, just share, tag, like. It all goes a long way. This is us voting. Every time you like, every time you comment, every time you share, you're voting. That's what we're doing. So support your people, support your industries, let's get this country back to, some sense of normality.
Great message, Nick. I appreciate it. And the science is out there. In the G20 countries, the government publishes the science, and it looks like it's not manipulated because it seems to be so true that it can change policy. Public Health England data is out there. I quote that a couple times a day when I'm blogging. And again, you can't argue with the numbers. So if we make those decisions going forward, it's always in the best interest. So great stuff, Nick. I really appreciate you. Again, your stand, I think, will help us make changes in hospitality, in the theater industry, in the tourism industry here in London, in all sorts of industries. If people can look at these numbers, and then we can start opening up things, again, in a proportionate way, a safe way, and get this economy back going. Because every day that we're locked down, there are massive mental health issues, physical health issues, and just economic health that we're going to be paying for years. So we've got to pay attention to this. And again, if you're watching us and you've never been to a gym before, and we seem like a couple of gym crazy people, just having that yoga practice, having that walk around the park, having that light start is one of the greatest investments in your health, and it can really keep the doctor away in a big way. So check it out, consider it. Again, 3 visits a week, 43% decrease in depression. We all want to be happier. It just, with the gym, you just got to pay for it a little, but it's one of the greatest feelings ever. So, Nick, I appreciate you. Come see us next time you're in London. And again, I can't thank you enough. It's been great watching you fight. It's made me feel great to see you standing up. You got a great way about you. You're super congruent with your message. You're super genuine. And, I think you make all the Scousers proud.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And thank you for everyone that continues to support us. Please continue to support each other as best you can. Thank you so much.
Okay, great stuff. That's Nick Whitcomb. We got links here. Follow on Instagram, support his GoFundMe campaign, and keep supporting this. Let's make sure the word gets out there to all of our officials, and let's move things forward. Thank you so much. We will see you next time on London Real. Thanks, Nick.
At London Real, we believe that individual transformation can change the world. Join us and start your journey today.